Who's that one person in your neighborhood? She's really nice and makes everyone feel like they've been a lifelong friend, whether they're 3 years old or 93 years old. She organizes parties for everyone on the block and makes some killer desserts. She'll happily do a favor for anyone and won't let you say no to taking money from her if you ever do a favor for her. He spends his time doing old-school skateboard tricks and is all around a cool guy. Most people think he's a weirdo, but that's just because they haven't got to know him. One time I was talking to him, and my neighbor, who's my mom's friend, saw me. She then condescendingly told my mom that I was hanging out with him. He lives with his parents. It's his house though, his parents are just there because his dad has Alzheimer's and his mom takes care of him. They have a greyhound, a pit bull named Daisy, and a chill cat that hangs out on the porch all day. Everyone thinks he's a psycho man-child because he lives with his parents, but he's actually the nicest person in the neighborhood and is self-sustaining. He owns his own skate shop. We have a guy affectionately known as Bus Stop Man. He's always at the bus stop. That guy can get off a bus, 10 minutes later, you see him getting off another bus at the same stop. You go to the local market and boom, Bus Stop Man is getting off the bus there. He's been seen getting off the bus with a fridge, a lawnmower, 2 chairs, a cat, not in a carrier, and various other household articles. We have a guy who walks up and down the street and mumbles all day. One day, he stripped naked and ran up and down the street until the cops came. We also have a crazy horse girl who likes to gallop up and down the street and make realistic sounding horse noises after she comes home from school. She's 17. I love how horse girls are a thing. Does everyone know a horse girl? I used to know one in school. I'm in a new neighborhood and that guy thus far is definitely this guy who is 50-ish and has a ton of RC vehicles that he often sits on his porch and speeds them around. I've seen half a dozen different cars and a helicopter. The other day I saw 2 boys playing with their own RC car and I see one run over and knock on the guy's door. They talk for a minute and the kid runs back over to his friend and they both bring their car to him and he begins working on it, apparently fixing it. Pretty cool. This is the first time on Reddit I've wondered if someone is talking about me. I'm not 50-ish, but I haven't aged well, let's say, so it's not a stretch. I might have been that neighbor growing up, lived on a farm near a suburban neighborhood. Frequently my pet goats would wander into the neighborhood, and I would have to go retrieve them from people's yards since they ate all the plants and ruined the landscaping or whatnot. Picture an 8-year-old girl come out of the woods on a pony, luring a herd of goats into following her using a bag of Cheetos. Yeah, that's me. I'm pretty sure my husband is that guy. We have a tree stump in our yard that is massive and unsightly. He spray painted a target on it and now it is designated as our axe-throwing tree. The husband is frequently found in the yard throwing axes, knives, saw blades, etc. at the stump. He has ginger hair down to his ass and a fondness for kilts, so we get a lot of weird looks in our small town. There has been a rash of break-ins and vandalism in our neighborhood, but our property is never messed with. I think he scares the kids that are doing it into staying away from our yard. I sure as hell wouldn't be breaking into a house whose owner is perfecting his distance axe throw. No. At my parents' house I grew up with a man that leaf blows his yard every single day. Without fail around 3 PM that annoying wail of a leaf blower would start up and not end for at least a half hour. Weekends he would start at 9 in the AM. He would start on his roof then blow off his whole yard. One day he couldn't get it started. He threw it in the garage, got into his car, and bought a new one an hour later. My neighbor's kids glued leaves on his driveway to mess with him. Rain would only postpone the annoyance. Once it had stopped raining for a few minutes, he would be out there. Really stunk in the summertime. I would get home from working construction all day and just want to take a nap, and without fail as my head hit the pillow I would hear that dreaded whir of that blower. There's this old guy who lives by himself. I think he's about an 80-plus veteran. He jogs every morning with this never-ending smile on his face while waving, nodding to everyone he gets eye contact with. I really feel that despite his solitude in life, he's much happier than most of the people in our town. I won't be his kind of that guy when I grow old. Mac is a 72-year-old white man who is the best neighbor ever. He climbed up on my roof in the freezing rain to help me patch it without asking. He let me use his boat to take my son fishing. I came home one Sunday afternoon and he gave me 3 dozen brown eggs and 6 pounds of bacon. He has orange grapefruit trees that he gives me fruit from. I borrowed a 5-gallon gas container from him one time to get gas for my lawnmower. I returned it full even though I got it empty and he refused to take it back. I had to put the gas in my truck to empty it out before he would take it back. I thought moving from the city to the country was going to be bad, best move I ever made. I'm pretty sure I'm that person in my neighborhood. My family has 6 cars and a 2-car driveway, so I constantly have to be on the lookout to take spots on the street once they open up. Also, we've had our Christmas lights up for about 7 or so years now. We live next door to a family with 2 daughters who sing acoustic covers of Taylor Swift songs out in their yard on a regular basis. Almost every day, even. School nights, they go at it before dinner. Weekends are the worst. Edit, I feel like I should elaborate, only because I don't want people to think I'm that old cat lady next door who hates her neighbor's musical kids. They can get really obnoxious some days. And when I say weekends are the worst, it's because karaoke is very popular in my country. And my next door neighbors own a karaoke machine. I kid you not. Of course I posted this so I could comment on my own post with my own story. There's a woman in my town we call Crazy Tammy. She has a house, but she lives in her car in the driveway of said house. A car that I'm almost certain doesn't even run. She's seen at least once a week walking around our neighborhood picking up any trash she finds, which she then brings back to her house and throws in a huge pile in her backyard that could now probably fill an industrial-sized dumpster. It's a miracle she hasn't been fined by the township for it, or maybe she has, we don't know. She's never spoken to anybody, and to our knowledge she can't even speak, because many have attempted to ask her questions and she just smiles and continues walking. Weird. Hi. It's me, I'm that person who knows everyone's schedules, and if I notice that it's 9 AM on Tuesday and you always leave by 8:30 on Tuesdays, but your car is still here, I'll likely knock on your door or send you a quick text to make sure you're okay. I'll also let everyone know that Carl down the block had a raccoon on his deck last week, so you should make sure you don't leave any food or cats outside. Oh, and the city is now picking up organics, so I'll organize for everyone to get a special little organics bucket to throw out their kitchen trash. I need a job. Oh God, someone please hire me. Words. One of my neighbors has a restored Mustang. Nice car and all, but it's loud as fuck even just at idle, and he's constantly revving it up while just sitting in his driveway. Now I really don't care, I'm a car guy, except when he does this every Sunday at 5 AM. There is a house I pass frequently that has no less than a dozen full-size black metal animal statues in his yard. Bears, elk, eagles, wolves, you name it. They are huge and very detailed. His neighbors must love him. We have a neighbor that we call Frickin' Ed because he's an asshole. He called my house to yell at my mom about my dad because when my dad was shoveling the snow he had his back to Ed's house. Apparently this is very disrespectful. An apartment building I lived in a few years ago had a doorstep shitter. About once a week, someone in the building, about 15 apartments, would open the door in the morning to find a turd sitting at their doorstep. There were signs up all over the place, people were staying up trying to catch them, but no one ever did. A mystery for the ages. The best story I have is via my wife. Early in our relationship, she had a friend of a friend who was in a bad relationship rife with domestic violence, so the wife offered up her house as a safe refuge if needed. She told all of her neighbors to be on the lookout for any strange dudes who might be hanging around just in case the abusive ex followed this girl to the wife's house. Her neighbor was like, "Yeah, I've seen a weird dude around. He keeps talking to my cats all the time," and my wife had to let them know that that weird dude was her boyfriend and he was okay. The cat will come from 5 houses down when I call it, so it's a pretty awesome cat too. This is the serial killer's neighbor. I have lived in my house since I was 5, I'm 25 now. I have never seen this neighbor, nor has any of the other neighbors. But they exist. The light on their garage door turns on at night and off during the day. They drive their car into the garage and then close the door. When they leave they open the garage door already in the car and drive off. Windows tinted on car so you can't see in. Won't answer the door when you ring doorbell, puts no candy on door during Halloween. Has no mailbox by curb but instead you have to put it in the door mail slot. Hires people to do yard work. 20 years of being 2 houses away from them and have never seen them. Nor have any other neighbors. There's a maybe 55-year-old slim fit black guy who rides around on his bike in a 90s windsuit kind of getup and plays a boombox. He used to have a setup where the music played from small speakers bungee corded to the back shelf area, but now he has a fully installed, encapsulated system. It lights up, it's loud. He just rides, and then sits, and listens to old school Motown and early hip-hop for hours. He's the best. Can't be sad when you see and hear Bike Boombox Man, just sitting around jamming out with his helmet still on. The best. Neighbor on my left. She talks all the time even if you are busy doing yard work. She tells you what she thinks you need to do to your yard. Even told me our fence was an eyesore. I have seen her talking to the other neighbors too. There's a woman in my neighborhood who thinks that someone poisoned her 2 cats. She filed police complaints against several other neighbors and circulated letters in which she claimed that certain neighbors had killed her cats, were morally unfit people, etc. etc. It's me. I walk around with my swords, non-sharpened, in the street doing LARP scenarios by myself. It helps me workshop ideas for my D&D campaigns. I also spend a lot of time singing around my neighborhood. I like being outside, sue me. When I was younger, I used to play football in my neighbor's garden. We would always shoot the ball over a fence and into this crazy woman's garden. We would have to climb over the fence to get the ball. It wasn't that hard, but it was a big fence and we're just kids. One day, she put up 2 ladders, making the fence easier to climb. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to use the ladders. She would stand in her window and watch us play and rush out while screaming at us if we even touched the ladders. She didn't use them or anything, she just conveniently placed them there so we couldn't use them. She also puts up a flag on her cat's birthday. Edit, phrasing. He doesn't live there anymore, but my girlfriend and I used to call him Beats by Dre. He lived below us and chose the worst times to produce his loops and play them at unacceptable levels, which were horrendous by the way. Douchebag a few houses down keeps his 2 small dogs in a small cage in their garage. The garage door is always cracked so I can see them in there, and they are always there. Why have them if you're just gonna put them in a cage away from human interaction? Todd. Todd talks with a Western Massachusetts Hilltown drawl. Todd renovated his house so that it is now at least 1/2 auto garage. This was so Todd could move his sweet RV in during the winter months. Todd gets shit-faced on Bud Heavy and drives his daughter's Barbie Power Wheel around the neighborhood, often ending with hilariously injurious results. Todd often yells at people driving too fast on our street, every so often kicking the doors or tail lights of said violators. Todd has been living on the same corner his entire life, having grown up in the house right next door to the aforementioned RV shrine he currently lives in. Todd's also a pretty helpful dude and lets me borrow his tools every so often. Todd kinda rules. There's this crazy guy who lives next door. One day, he ran across the street while wearing a metal blanket and stole my paper. I called the cops and it turns out he was some kind of tweaker. They busted down his door, tazzed his ass, then they hauled him away in a cop car. I saw him get dropped off the next day. I guess his brother is some kind of lawyer who specializes in elder law. There used to be an old lady who'd lean out her second-floor window every day, just watching the neighborhood. Just staring at everyone for hours. Last summer, she stopped and we assumed she'd died. Then a couple months ago I saw her again. It turns out she and her housemate, sister or daughter, don't use the upper floor anymore, and I guess hanging out the lower windows is less appealing. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed seeing her being weird. She'd sometimes wave, until she wasn't there anymore. She's not particularly rare here in Germany, nosy old folks are the norm, but she was my block's weird old lady and I kinda miss her. There's a lady in my neighborhood that just stands outside her place and stares at people driving or walking by. But that oldest creakier skeletor looking ass lady who just mean mugs everyone and says nothing. And she doesn't just stand on a porch or her yard, she stands on the sidewalk in front of her house. Growing up we had this crazy guy who would stand at the end of his driveway and yell at anyone he thought was driving past too fast. One day my mom gets home and tells us that he tried to throw a cat in front of the car as she drove past. Doorbell rings, it's the guy, yelling at her because she almost hit his cat. She yelled back that his cat wouldn't almost get hit if he wasn't throwing it at cars. He yells back that he only threw his cat at cars that drove too fast. It was really fucking entertaining while it lasted. Oh yeah, and my mom was a crazy speeder. My old neighborhood had a guy who lived right along a corner of my street. He was a construction worker but seemed to be laid off 11 months out of the year. So he'd set up huge orange cones in the middle of the street so his daughter could ride her bike, and then he'd stand at the bottom of the driveway and mean mug anyone who drove past. He'd always have this smug look too, when he saw you driving slow, as if it was because he was intimidating, and not because it was right along a sharp corner, and there was a 6-year-old on a bike nearby and it was tough navigating around those stupid giant fucking cones he had in the street. That guy sucked. I think people who speed through residential neighborhoods where the speed limit is 25 or below are assholes. There's usually kids playing in the streets, or people walking their dogs or jogging. It's just really inconsiderate. Dude, we have a similar person in my neighborhood. We call him the Wanderer. No matter the weather or time of day, the Wanderer can be seen walking up and down the busiest street in the area. He always has a coffee and a cigarette. And he just walks. He's been doing his thing since I was a little kid. I used to do that for my grandfather when I stayed at his house. He's an engineering genius, built a working airplane from parts that Continental, worked for them, didn't need anymore, built his own 3-story house and subsequent toolshed, rebuilt a Mustang from ruined parts, but for some reason he wanted a ranch and was not a ranch hand. So he'd get pissed drunk and send me off to collect them on a 4x4 he made using a retired tractor and what I swear was a jet engine. Everyone in our town knew me by my wind-blown expression and the Franken tractor I rode on. Ha ha ha, are you Tom Bombadillo? Edit Jesus, folks, I understand that his name is Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadillo is what he calls himself in his little rhymes, and I can't imagine him cruising on a pony surrounded by goats without singing about it. My dad sort of does this. If the dog poops on the first half of the walk, he'll leave the poop bag on the curb and then get it on the way back to the house. This way you don't have to walk around with a bag of poop for most of the walk. I feel your pain. I lived next door to a guy that mowed his grass every single day. He was nice enough to start at 8 AM though, and I think that was only because that was legally the earliest he could do it. Same thing with the rain, soon as it was over, out comes the mower. At that time I would work until 2 AM or 4 AM in the morning, so sometimes I didn't get to bed till 6 AM. It really sucked, and earplugs didn't seem to help much. My bedroom window was right next to the property line. Guy had a nice lawn though. I moved out ASAP. He probably has some kind of OCD. My mom says one of her neighbors down the street vacuums his driveway every single day. Actually. And he shows her how clean his vacuum attachments are. She also said he hates his neighbors on the one side, don't know why, so when it snows he builds a wall of snow between their houses. Just keeps shoveling all of it into a giant pile so he doesn't have to see them. That's not it though. He doesn't like snow on his yard, this snow wall is more on the neighbor's property, so he shovels it into garbage bags, then puts it in his backyard. Then I guess he waits until it all melts in the bag and dumps it out? I have no idea. I kind of feel sorry for the guy, but I also think it's funny. I have a similar guy, but minus the running. He and his wife are Russian I believe, and he is always outside my complex either walking, garbage run, etc. Every time I walk past he waves at me, says hello in Russian and has a huge smile on his face. I love the old bean. I once stopped and asked him how to say hello in Russian so I could say it back, but I don't think he understood me and started going on about God knows what in Russian. All the while smiling and shaking my hand. I love this guy. Do you live in an how-controlled area? I live in one. Lake Mead is predicted to be bone dry by like 2020 or something like that, but water your plants of the HOA lackeys will be by to snap pictures and send you a letter. It's so unsettling having someone coming by just snapping pictures of people's homes like it's nothing. Next time, just open the door and pull up a chair. If questioned, say you assumed they wanted you to hear, what with them arguing right outside your door and all. Like they were putting on street theater or something. Hey, I used to live in a similar complex and the guy below me would constantly bump music and smoke weed, and I'd smell the weed coming up through my floor vents. This went on about a month until I calmly went downstairs and explained to this guy that I don't like smelling his weed all the time and hearing his music, and he was actually a really cool dude that seemed really sorry. Sometimes just talking to your neighbors helps. Moms are the worst when it comes to this. They'll make that stupid overacted oh slow down hand gesture. But they're all hypocrites, they drive through their own neighborhood going well over the speed limit while texting. Pisses me off to no end. I had a mother jump out in front of my car while at the bus stop with her kids. I wanted to hit her, and then tell the kids that's why you don't jump in front of moving cars. Then drive off with her lifeless body being dragged along like a moist pile of shit against porcelain, leaving a smear everywhere it touched and then never to be seen again. Edit. Wow, thanks for the Reddit gold. I never expected this to blow up so much. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.